Welcome to Beyond the Portrait. I am absolutely delighted to introduce my inaugural guest. This person is a celebrated interior designer. He's a celebrity on multiple TV shows, most recently of Queer Eye. He has a beautiful new book, The Space That Keeps You. I am so pleased to welcome my friend, my longtime collaborator, Jeremiah Brent. He is someone who everybody loves. He makes everybody feel safe and seen and heard. And he's an expert at creating an experiential life that is filled with beauty and with substance. There's so many nuggets of wisdom from this conversation. I can't wait for you to hear. Without further ado, Jeremiah Brent. Hi, I'm so happy to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, I missed you. What's going on? You've got a podcast.
You too. I got a podcast. I know. I'm like, so you're my very first guest. You're my inaugural guest. And I couldn't have thought of a better person to start this journey.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. You and I have really been through it together for a long time.
Really have.
I did not realize until you asked me to do this and you sent through like all of your prep work, because of course you're beautifully organized.
I try.
How long we've known each other. It's wild.
I know. It's wild. Yeah, 11 years. It's bananas. And we were babies, like little babies. Because we're the same age. And so it's like we were just 28, nearly 29.
Oh my God. I was literally flying blind.
I mean, we both kind of were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so for the listener. So Jer and I met, 11 years ago, and you and Nate had just gotten engaged. I was the photography director at Domino, and it hadn't been public yet that we were bringing it back. And so we shot your Rita Hazan project, and that's where we met.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the first time actually that Nate and I had ever collaborated together, which was a really interesting exercise for like a young couple that were also planning their wedding. So it was really, but it was beautiful. And you shot it, of course. It was like, the whole thing was so beautiful. It was, that feels like a million years ago, but also like 10 seconds ago.
I know it's weird how time is. And I think, and kind of the time capsule aspect, I find, our work together, we've had so many incredible things that we've like done that we've captured, right? So it's like, so that was, you'd just gotten engaged for that shoot. And then, a year later, it was another shoot for Domino. And I remember, that was like a big shoot and you were growing your hair out because it wasn't public yet, but you guys were expecting Poppy and you were not going to cut your hair until she was born. And it's like, so I have all of these memories associated with the photography that it's like, yes, it's like parts of your career, but also it's like, it's your life.
God, that's so crazy. And it got made me emotional for a second because I forgot, like, it's also, by the way, I'm so bizarre. Like, who decides like, I'm going to grow my hair out long until my daughter, like, what is wrong with me?
I mean, I'm into it. And also you kind of did it again.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now
the hair
this
is
is where
similar.
it's at. But it was you're right. It was such a particular chapter. I remember the way, I remember leaning against that fireplace and I remember the warmth of the sun on the stone and, the beautiful, I think, and obviously I'm going to spend probably more time than you care to. I'm talking about how great you are, but I think that was really, what was so beautiful about our relationship, and especially where it formed and how it formed, is there was always a tremendous amount of respect, and you always treated me so beautifully with the way you photographed, and you always care about everything you do and the artistry of what you do, and we always had a good time. And when I look back, it's always been the same throughout our careers as it's progressed. And you really are one of the few people that I can think of that I have worked with for so long. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it because, I think you're the only person that I've ever been able to shoot the whole trajectory of their career, right? Because we met and your design firm was only a year old. And because we're the same age, it's like, and we also have similar astrology, right? So it's like, I'm a Libra sun and a Sag rising. You're a Sag Libra rising, it's like, and so I find our collaborations are so mirrored in a lot of ways, it's like, and so we've kind of grown together and, it's like, it's just been really a special thing to kind of, because you're the longest person I've ever shot for, I think, too. You and Charlotte Moss, it's like, and it's just, it's just bananas to me that like you had just started your design firm and now look at you. I mean, it's so incredibly impressive.
Well, same to you. Is it still as fun to you now as it was back then?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think, at a certain point, it's like I've been shooting since I was 6 years old. And so it's like, and professionally for about 20 years. And so I'm
Yeah.
at this point where that's kind of where the podcast came, because as much as I love photography being snapshots and, moments in time, I like this idea of the podcast kind of being a time capsule that's like a livable art form. And that's
Hmm.
something that, I think that I actually really was able to kind of succinct that I actually had the idea, over a year ago. But when I went to your book launch and you had talked about how this was, your book, The Space That Keeps You, everybody go buy it. It's amazing. But it's like, but at your book launch, it was really like, it kind of like hit my head a little bit. Like it kind of sunk in more, because you had said, you work in a livable art form. So you'd never worked in something that was going to be permanent. And literally when you said that, I was like, it's the opposite for me. I only do things that once they're out in the world, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
And so it's like such an interesting concept to be like, what is that livable art form, and how does one become an artist? And it's, you reach a certain level of competency, and it's, you just kind of get complacent.
Yeah.
And so like, that's kind of why I wanted to do this, because I was like, as an artist, you have to step out into the unknown. And I don't know how to do this. It's like,
Yeah.
I think that it's like, I know how to make pictures and I'm really good at that. It's like, but something that's more kind of, a livable art form. It's just, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, but you also know how to make people feel safe, which I think is a really, really beautiful thing about who you are, not only as a creator, but as a person. And I think this medium will be really great for you. I think, for me, I never wanted to do a podcast. I was like, nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear my voice. I don't like the sound of my voice. But God, was I wrong? What I've learned just through conversation and understanding and connection, which, by the way, as we all know, is not that easy to find any longer. And which is why people listen to this, because they get to hear story and connection. They don't need to look at anything. They just want to hear and feel. I think you're going to kill it. I know you're going to kill it. And you're going to learn so much about yourself creatively. Like, I mean, what I've understood about myself and what I need to be doing more of, and what, it's just really fascinating, the whole process, and that sense of discovery, which is not easy to find creatively anymore. So you're going to kill it.
No. Oh, well, you're just a delight. Thank you. That's so sweet.
We'll see what you think at the end of this.
Well, I'm excited. Let's get to some of these questions. So it's
Yeah, bring it on.
we've had, so many years of collaborations, and I think, I want to kind of like think about like the why, because I think our past very much impacts why we're drawn to certain professions.
Yeah.
And so, like hindsight is 2020, and then the choice becomes very clear that you're like, oh, I was always going to do this. So let's kind of go back and let's do some like core memory stuff for like when you were a child. Things
Let's
that
do
like,
it.
yeah, some core memories and like how you like were impacted and how you see the world.
Lucky for you, I've been in therapy pretty extensively for the last 6 months, so this will be an easy breezy exercise.
I mean, I've been in therapy for 9 years, and some of that time was twice a week. So I hear ya.
Listen, listen, everybody, get into it.
It's
I
my
love
favorite
it.
thing, to be honest.
Yeah. So core memories as far as design, like when I think
I
back,
think in
like,
just your worldview. Yeah,
Right.
worldview, design, all the things.
God, I mean, you name it. I think, listen, I did not have an easy childhood. It was complicated. My mother, I was a child of a single mother. For the first half of my adolescence, she remarried. He was not a great stepfather. I'll leave it at that. It was really terrible for me, and a really tumultuous situation. And my mother worked 3 jobs up until the time that I left for college. So she was always working and providing and taking care of everybody. But when my mother snapped into consciousness, and when she was there and she participated, and she did on the weekends, she would take us somewhere, whether it was camping because it was free, or in a town to go antique shopping. The thing that she did, which still really resonates with me, and now we do with our children, is she would always require us to tell her about something that we saw that was beautiful. And it seems really simple, that practice on that exercise, but it was really formidable for me because it changed the way that I looked for beauty. Because sometimes we would be places and I would think, this is like a junk store. Like there's nothing beautiful, but I would always be required to find something. And so, I think about that a lot, even with our children, and they have to do the same thing, because it requires you to participate differently. She was also the mother that, like, on the weekends we would go look at homes, like, that we couldn't afford. But but it was fun to go in the fantasy of how to live. And I think about it a lot, especially this last year, because when I was writing the book, I think I always wanted to create lives for people. I didn't know that there was a career that you could do it through interior design. And I realize now at this chapter of my creative process as a designer that what I love about what I do is not the pretty things. I mean, I love objects. I love a stone. I love a tile. I love a tassel. But like really imagining people like walking into their home and moving through it, that's what really excites me. And that's what excited me when I was 7 years old. Thinking I would like to make up stories of like who the people were. I had no money. I'd never been anywhere. We didn't travel, but I knew how I wanted people to feel. And I would dream of how I would make people feel in that home. And that's what I'm still doing.
I mean, I love that so much. And, we have so many overlaps because I also have a single mother and, grew up that way. We grew up with humble beginnings. We also, camping was the only vacations that we would do.
Right.
I
loved camping. Do you like camping now? Or
I really like camping, but I have a 2-day threshold. I'm like, because I also wear contacts. And so I'm like, I need a bathroom access. Yes. So it's like, if it's like one of those
campground with a bathroom.
With a bathroom,
that's fine.
It's like
that's 2
days. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a monster.
No, what are you? Biking? No, you're fine. No,
I don't bike. I'm very clumsy.
No, I'm going to take my kids actually on their first camping trip this summer. So I'm very excited about it. TBD whether or not Nate will be joining, but that's the plan.
I mean, he's a city boy, so I'm not really that surprised, No. It's like, but it's good for them. I took Margot kayaking, my dog. I took her kayaking last year. I think it was last year. Oh, she loved it. She didn't like it at first. She clawed my legs up because she was very scared. But then once she like figured out that we weren't going to drown, she was like, oh, this is cool. And I literally have video footage of her giant smile. It's like so living her best life. Yeah. Well, going back to like looking for the beauty, I actually think that that's maybe why you're so talented at things, because I've been thinking about it. And I think you're a form of alchemist. I'm similar. It's like where you kind of take things that are less than ideal and then you transmute them. And so I think finding beauty when it doesn't necessarily seem like there is beauty, like a junk shop, it's like, or finding, your life, like you kind of were able to kind of use certain ingredients and then make something like absolutely marvelous from them. Like I think it's because of that childhood, right? It's like like a muscle that you kind of learned and then you were able to kind of master.
That's really sweet of you to say. Yeah, I think, I do. I mean, the truth is I do. I see beauty in everything. I see beauty in conflict. I see beauty in strife. I see beauty in, you name it. I can always find something beautiful, or I can see a way to transform it. It's what I love to do. It's, we've talked about this before, but I love what I do. Like I absolutely love it. To be able to work through and in your passion is the ultimate gift. You know what I mean? And obviously, as you know, it's changed. As your life and your career change, your business changes, the process changes, but the passion has never changed. And I appreciate you saying that, because that's still my biggest challenge, even with whether I'm designing product or whether we're working on a project. I really want to find the beauty in something and give people access to that beauty. Yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that in your work. I remember when we shot one of your offices, it was like midtown, nasty commercial building. And you initially wanted Nate to move up there. And he was like, no. And then you went in and made it this like incredible safe haven. And then he was like, actually, I'll take it.
I know. What an asshole.
But that's only just a testament of your gifts. It's like you saw the potential and you were able to make it happen. I mean, that's the thing. I think a lot of times people, they're able to dream big, but they don't actually do the things and they're not able to like actually make it happen. And you have done both, and I think that stems from that skill that your mom, when she was, raising you, I think that really absolutely impacted. Let's talk about your grandmother, because I think that your story is actually more influenced, like even from before that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I thank you for talking about the book. When I started writing it, I had no idea how much my grandmother had an impact on me. She was not alive. She was alive for probably the first, half of my adolescence. And She was really impactful the time that I spent with her. She was formidable. She was, 4'2", basically, Portuguese, and tough as hell. She was a, really, really complicated mother to my mother and her sisters, which they had forgiven her on later. But she was really shockingly nurturing to me. And I think what was so interesting about her, and I wrote about this in the book, was just kind of watching the way she moved through the world and the story that she told about herself through the way she lived, which was so fascinating to me because it was in direct conflict to the way people saw her and knew her. She was, like I said, not warm as a mother or particularly kind, but incredibly creative. And when I knew her, like everything she did was ceramics, and she had this greenhouse that she grew everything in, and she cooked. She lived to cook meals for people. She loved the ceremony of cooking. My biggest memory of home isn't necessarily where I grew up, but her house, and remembering that she used to sit in this corner of her kitchen. She had 500 cats. There was always a cat. Yeah, there was always a cat around, and she'd sit in the kitchen having her coffee in this particular window. And I remember the sound of the screen door that would always open up because she'd go out to check on her atrium. But she was always really sweet to me. And I think back now and I wonder if there was an intuition there that she knew that I was a little bit different and needed something. But she was always she would take me to get her hair done, which was a giant helmet, basically. And everything in her life was red. Her car, and not red, but like ox blood. Like she had a Cadillac. Yeah, she had a Cadillac. They were not wealthy, but somehow she had an old Cadillac. It was ox blood. The interior was ox blood. She was always in an ox blood or a red cardigan or a shirt. It was just, her nails were always that red. She was just, it was the first time that I realized that your things in your space could tell a story about you that maybe you weren't able to. So I don't know. I thought it was so beautiful. I think about her all the time. I see her a lot, actually, in our daughter, which is really kind of wild to watch.
I can imagine, and I think it's interesting because, like she's really, I think, set the stage, right? Because you've talked about publicly that your mom's an army brat, right? Like a military brat. And so it's interesting that she was like a really like kind of a harsh mom, and like she didn't, and then your mom didn't really feel roots, right?
Yeah.
And so then she moved around a lot, and for you, the kind of like fascination with roots, has been like a big part of your life, a part of your career, like feeling grounded. And I wonder, it's like if your grandmother, like if she maybe took a little bit more time with you and kind of almost to like, it's like reparations, right? Like for how it was for your mom, right?
I think
and
so.
I think, right?
I think
like
so.
it's like she probably felt bad, and like as she got older, realized that she could have done more. And then for your mom, she kind of gave you the skills to kind of find home wherever you are. But that kind of thirst for roots, like it's really more like it comes from your grandmother, probably.
Yeah. It does. And I think the interesting thing about my mother too is, we largely lived in the same home my entire childhood. My mom worked tirelessly to get us in like the worst house in the best neighborhood because we were in a bad neighborhood when I was younger and it was really dangerous, and she got us out like only she could. But yeah, I think about it a lot, it's interesting, for me, my big goal with the sermon, it's an interesting thing to say as a decorator, and especially somebody who is on a network that, tells you to flip it and sell it as quick as possible. I really do want to create spaces for people that hold all the echoes of their lives. Like that's the fantasy for me. I don't know if I'm going to be that person still, you know what I mean? Because it's an interesting thing. I mean, we talked about astrology, but I like have an audacity for life, and I like an adventure. And it's like I do something, I'll give it everything I have, but then I'm ready to go to something, do it again, and to try, which is for my triple Virgo husband is a fucking nightmare. But the truth is, life is so beautiful and so big, and so I'm always kind of I'm always trying to figure it out. But yeah, roots for me creatively is it. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, and finding that with like the people you love, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so it's like you've kind of been influenced with your, how you make people feel. And then also like what we said, like the echoes of somebody's life, like, and that's stuff that can be, it's the memories. Like you've talked a lot about, when you've moved houses, that it's like,
Hmm.
it's the memories that you miss. It's not necessarily like the mantle or something like that, you know?
I know, which is a really complicated thing to say as a decorator. But it's true. You know what the
Yeah.
truth is? Decor doesn't keep you. It doesn't. I mean, it can help you live beautifully. It can help you
Hmm.
tell a story about yourself. It can help you
Yeah.
share what you're inspired by, but it doesn't hold you. It doesn't keep you there. And I think that's what's interesting to me. Creating a nook in a window
Hmm.
seat that, holds them like that from like that moment in my grandmother's kitchen. Like that
Yeah.
kept her there. You know what I mean? That rooted her in that house. It gave her a way to participate in every day that felt authentic. I mean, that's the stuff that I'm looking for in our firm. The
Hmm.
first part of our exercise is always like, who are you? Where is you?
Yeah.
Where does your day start? Where does it end? What do you not have in your life that you're looking for? And how can we
Hmm.
make a space in your home, to change the trajectory of the way you live? So it's much more psychosymptomatic than it was when I started.
Yeah.
Um, but that makes sense because we evolve, hopefully, as creatives, and that's the
Absolutely.
goal.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like the kind of clarity comes with age. Like you don't necessarily know that you've already been doing it all this time because it's like a muscle that you learn through another way, right? Like I
Hmm.
think that both of us are good at kind of transforming things that were maybe not so great and then made them better. And we've been able to use that in our work. Like I
Yeah.
think for myself, I didn't realize that I was using so much alchemy until my friend only like like a few months ago was something. I moved apartments randomly and it was like it was a situation. And I basically, I had 5 days to decide if I was moving or not. I had no notice and it was like a problem, but I
Oof.
got into action, found a better apartment, moved in 2 weeks. And my friend was like, this is why I love you, because you take kind of shitty stuff and you make it work for you. And I was like, oh, because I already do that in my work. I didn't realize that I do it as a soul. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's probably why I'm good at it. Like I'm good at making things. Like that's my gift, is like seeing what's special and then capturing it, elevating it, and amplifying it. Like that's what I do. It's
Yeah.
like, but I learned that skill because in my life I use that skill. It
Yeah.
never had clicked to me before.
Yeah. Listen, I've probably been doing it since I was a kid. I was quite the alchemy, as you know, growing up as a single parent has its
Yeah.
own issues, and then
Yeah.
sprinkling in some of the other stuff that inherently happens when they remarry. That it's not that great. You figure out
Mm.
a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's you have to be. It all has to have a little dose of alchemy in there. It's
Absolutely.
required.
Well, and just kind of like the resilience, and you've publicly talked about too that like there for when you started your business, you like sold everything. There was a time that you like lived in your car. I think that not
Yeah.
everybody like can actually even comprehend that the Jeremiah Brent that they know now literally lived in his car and sold everything to get his LLC set up. It's like what was that mindset? Like how did you know? And I think it's that because you are an alchemist, but how did you know in your mind and in your soul, hey, if I put everything into this, if I give it my all, it's going to work out? Like tell me about that.
It's so funny, Brett. I still feel like that kid. Isn't
I
that
mean,
weird?
same. Same.
It really does. I mean, even when people say things like, even the word success for me is still kind of a hard thing for me to wrap my arms around because I don't feel that. I still
Mm-hmm.
feel the same level of commitment and dedication and passion that I did, but it was hard. But the truth
Yeah.
is, I had just like this blind ambition and audacity that I still have. I'm really good
Yeah.
at failing. I'm a really good failer. I can fail with the best of them and then I can blink my eyes and move on. Nate always says that I am like the ultimate forgiver because it's true. And I don't know why. And I think maybe because of my childhood and some of the issues that I navigated with my stepfather and
Yep.
processing all that.
Yep.
I can forgive somebody in 2 seconds and move on, and it's done. And I'm the same way with life. And my biggest thing that I think about all the time is, and I thought about this as I'm on the precipice of turning 40.
I mean,
Um,
I know we're turning 40 this year, Chair. I'm 2 months older than you. It's coming for me.
but I keep thinking about, I look back and I truly cannot think of something that I regret. And that is a big deal to me. You know what I mean? Because I never regret failure, ever.
Yeah.
Because as you know, and it sounds like super cliche, but it always leads to something or opens up something or an awareness to something, doesn't make it less painful sometimes.
Right.
But I mean, I wasn't afraid then. I living in my car was terrifying and super scary, and I was blind with what I wanted to do and what I didn't. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I've always believed in myself and my ability to figure it out. And again, find the beauty. And I was like, I'll figure this out. I'll figure it out. And at that time, I was also struggling with my sexuality, which was a whole nother compounded thing. It was really scary. It was the most probably tumultuous time of my life. But through that, found like this incredible core group of friends, which I still have. I've had forever. They took care of them.
They're amazing.
Yeah, I know. They took care of me then. We still take care of each other now.
Yeah.
And it's funny. The kids read now, which is a whole nother thing. And Poppy's like, I can't believe you lived in your car. And I was like, yeah, but Pops, the truth is, like, it was so beautiful because it gave me this, and it was hard, but I needed to do this to get this, and it was part of it. I still identify as that guy, though, which is really crazy.
I mean, my therapist literally has said that to me recently. She's like, Brittany, the skills that you developed to get you to where you are, she's like, you don't need them as much now because you got there. And I was like, did I get there, Lucille? It's like,
yeah, it's true.
I mean, we have a certain level of fearlessness. It's like I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and a camera bag because of a Be Fearless candy wrapper. Like, true story. It's like with basically no money. And I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. It's like, and, I think that you kind of have to have that level of scrappiness in order to make it if you don't come from money. It's like, and I think it's just so impressive. Like, I know I don't like technically have a right to be proud of you, but because I have watched the trajectory of your career and because we have, a similar upbringing, I'm like so endlessly proud of you because it took a lot of fucking work. And, it's like, yeah, you're cute, but like, it's because you're smart and you work hard and you're a good person. It's like, it's
right back at you.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean, listen, you've been a part of that trajectory. You've been a part of all of that. I mean, it's really kind of wild how, these people become part of the fabric of, the tapestry of your life, so to speak. And, we've been intertwined together for the last, over a decade and watched each other and supported each other. And, it's a big deal, when I look back and, that shoot, for example, and when I met my husband, we weren't in equitable parts of our lives. I was young. I was getting into the same profession as my husband, who was as big as it gets. You know what I mean?
The biggest.
Oprah, he's the biggest. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he really started interior design television and made it interesting and made it with a soul and a heart. And that's great. And what's worked for us in a relationship is because he's always supported and believed in me creatively. There's never been an ounce of judgment or jealousy. But what I'm trying to say is to go to like that shoot with you for something we did and have somebody look at me and treat me in an equitable way as they did with him. It makes an impact on you. It's a big deal. And so I just, in case you don't know it, like that kind of stuff doesn't go anywhere. I've never forgot that. I'll never forget. It's like the first person that ever, when I started my design firm, it was Shane at a store called Big Daddy's. And nobody would give me a discount. They didn't believe that I was a designer. They didn't. And he looked at me and he goes, what do you need? We're going to figure it out. And treated me like, and it just changes, the way somebody, I don't know, it has a huge impact. So you're a big part of that.
That really like means a lot to me, actually. It's like, because I feel like we're both really good at seeing people. And like, that's actually the core of what we're good at.
I hope so.
It's so interesting because when I saw the Queer Eye news, not that you had gotten it yet, when I saw the news that there was going to be a cast member leaving, my immediate thought, and it was like in my brain, I didn't obviously say this to anyone, but my immediate thought was they need to cast Jer. And then when I saw the news, I actually screamed and I was like, I knew it. And I'm trying to keep my voice down so that I don't blast everybody's eardrums. But I actually like screamed really loudly because I was like, you are the perfect person for it. And I think, it's interesting to me because yes, you're an 8100 designer. You're very established. You're really good on camera. It's like I've seen you when we've done brands, like you can effortlessly, they give you the cues and you can effortlessly deliver your lines without even practice. One take wonder. I mean, it's remarkable, but that's actually not why I knew you should do it. And this is why. So everybody I know that has ever met you feels so seen by you. And I hear it a lot because everybody knows that we work together. So, if like other designers, people who have run into you and, when I'm not there, they will then tell me, they're like, I met Jeremiah. He's so awesome. He's so kind. I felt like I made a new friend. And then I think about your team and I see the underbelly of people's firms, right? I am in it. It is very unusual to have people, you and Nate are both good at this, but it's like, but to have long-term staff that knows the inner workings of your life, like your team knows when you take a shower, like your team knows everything and they love you. They love you. And I think that, so it's interesting to me because when I was preparing for this and I was looking back at like some of your old interviews and also I've seen you in action for, 11 years. And I was like, that's what Jer's good at. Yes, you can put together a room and all of that. What you're good at is making people feel like they're supported and that they are safe and they are seen, which is what Queer Eye does. It goes into people's, homes and they remake their lives. And I couldn't think of a more perfect person because more than anybody else I think I've ever met, make people feel so seen and loved and supported.
Thank you so much.
But it's true. And I think, it's like you look at your past and I think, so much of it's like you've healed some generational trauma. It's like your grandmother was not a warm, nurturing person. And I think that is actually your superpower is being a nurturer. Like that is your thing.
That's really sweet of you to say. Thank you. It's, wow. I mean, thank you. First and foremost, it's literally what I love. That's all I care about is the people part of everything I do. I don't care about the sofas as much as I do about the connection, as and the way that you feel creatively. The Queer Eye thing was holy fuck. I was like, I don't know. I obviously was friends with some of them before. And when I was approached by it, I was like, yeah, why? Of course I'm gonna do it. This is fun. We finished shooting a couple months ago. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I still get choked up thinking about it. First of all, I have 4 of like the dearest friends now who I love more than anything. I'm actually going to see JVN tomorrow.
I saw his show on Saturday.
Oh my God. Amazing. How was that dirty slut?
He was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, poor guy or poor them. I literally was like, I have this noise that I make that only I know how to make. And it's like and because there were not a lot of seats. And so I got there early to make sure I had a seat and it was at the bar. And so it's like, so better. I was elevated. I mean, I definitely had some marks, but anyway, so I was like elevated. And so like I had like a beeline view of them. And I was like, oh, because I'm so loud, as you know, when I'm laughing and things like that. So I was like,
she loved that.
I hope so.
Yeah, of course. I call him Jackie. I'm like, Jackie would have loved that. No, but I mean, when you talk about, the thing that I don't think, and what I'm going to spend, an obnoxious amount of time trying to articulate to people over the course of like as we enter a press tour and everything is like, this show is real. It's like unlike anything I've ever participated in. It was the hardest work I've ever done, hands down. I mean, I'm doing full renovations in 2 days and it's me. It's not like I'm the one that's there moving things around and objects and there's this insane team but like, you watch these people, Brittany, you literally watch them walk into another version of their lives. And everybody, by the way, is like one, mistake or one thing away from your whole life unraveling. And these people are just looking for one chance and one opportunity and to be there and to be part of it and to watch 4 other really creative, really fantastic people. It was wild. I kept telling everybody throughout the show, I was like a broken record, but I would look at them and I would be like, guys, I don't think you guys get this. Like, you really do change people's lives. It was just wild. It was beautiful and fun and weird and so scary because it like brought up parts of myself that I'd compartmentalized and put away. You know, I
I
forgot
can
how to
imagine.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, I forgot how to be a fun little fag and dancing around. And you know what I mean? And I use that word with pride because I'm allowed to.
You're
But
allowed to.
I,
You reclaim it, babe.
yes, but I forgot. Like I am not silly and dancing and they did. They pushed me out of my comfort zone. They reminded me about parts of myself that I forgot. They encouraged me to be silly and goofy and I don't know. They just they brought me back to life in a way that I didn't expect. You know, now they're such a huge part of my heart, those four. And
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the show to come out. You know,
I mean, I can't wait.
it's going to be wild. You know, I know everybody's like up in arms and there's been a lot of controversy, but I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised with the way it feels.
The thing is, it's about an evolution. And just because people make different choices and want to do something else with their life doesn't mean that it needs to be like a drama, right? You
No,
know, it's like, and I
no,
think, you know, it's like, and people are in things for a season, you know, it's like, and I think it's just, it makes sense to me that this was, you know, the trajectory for you because I really, you know, it's like that's one of your gifts, you know, it's like, and I think that you are so intentional and you're such a nurturer that this is, I can absolutely see. And I think it's probably extremely meaningful, you know, to be able to give back in that way. And it's true. You're really like, I'm not surprised at all. Like you're Jeremiah Brent and our, one of our last shoots, you were like vacuuming. And I like literally turned to my assistant and I was like, he hasn't changed in 11 years, like in
no,
terms of that regard, you know,
no.
it's like,
I do
I think
love to vacuum. It's like a trigger for me.
it is very
Like
satisfying.
it's instant gratification.
Absolutely. It's a quick one.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and honestly, also to the gift of like creating something like this to give my children to see. You
Yeah.
know, we've talked about this before, and I've been saying it for 1,000 years, but I really do want to leave things a little bit more beautiful than it was when I got here. That's my
Yeah.
big goal. And this show is beauty. This is and there was no controversy. They were sweet, and we are out to dinner 3 times a week together. I've never laughed so hard. I miss them. I'm going to see them all together in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of it, Brittany. I'm really proud of it.
I mean, I can't wait to see it. You know, it's like I think that it's going to be really impactful for people and I think let's talk about representation because I think that that's
Yeah.
something that, you know, as a photographer, I feel very strongly about like representation in media is extremely important. And I think too, like I don't know if we've actually got into it in much detail, but I left the Mormon church because of gay rights. Like that's why I left. And so, and not to make this about me, but it's like, but I think it's when I met you, I was still a Mormon. You
I
know,
didn't
it's
know
like,
that.
yeah. So I was still Mormon
Wow.
and I know. And it's so funny because I don't really actually talk about that too publicly. But I remember you had done an Instagram post about Don't Say Gay. And that really, I was like,
I
all right,
remember.
yeah. And I was like, it's time for me to actually say something about this. And so for the very first time on my own social media, I publicly was like, I grew up Mormon. I'm not now. And I left the church because of gay rights. And I was like, and I'm not part of that community, but because of my experience working with so many wonderful, you know, LGBT, you know, Q plus, it's like, I honestly like, it changed my life and photography, you know, gave me access to a different, I was from Utah. Like I didn't know, like at least in those
Yeah.
days, I didn't know people that were
That's the
different from me
thing.
in that way, you know? And then I work in design, you know, it's like, and I met people like you. And I think you and Nate have done such a remarkable job about kind of being a beacon of your family. And, you know, on that first shoot, this is why I have this thing about dates. So that's why I know that it's our 11-year anniversary this week, because my grandmother, my Mormon grandmother in Utah, loved Nate.
Of course.
Loved Nate.
Of
And
course.
I met you guys the day before her birthday. And I never take pictures with famous people because it's weird. But I was like, it's my grandmother's birthday and she will literally like not forget this. And so I think you were still getting ready and I was like, Nate, can I just get a picture real fast? It's for my grandmother. It's her birthday. And he was like, okay. So we do it. It's unfortunately blurry because this is what happens when I don't take my own pictures.
Of
But anyway,
course.
but it's like, but she had that picture on her refrigerator until she died.
Wow.
Like multiple years later, it was like 6 years later, you know, it's like, and I think that it means something when people see other ways of living. And I think for, you know, as you know, in Mormon, you know, the Mormon religion, a lot of boys in particular, there's a lot of suicide, you know, gay Mormon boys. And
Yeah,
so
still.
I think still, and so I think I just am so like, I would love to hear your thoughts on that and like how that responsibility feels like, and just that whole what you feel comfortable sharing.
God, it doesn't even feel like a responsibility. It feels like a duty. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest with you, we have a lot of fucking work to do. Nate and I got married the year gay marriage was legalized in New York. We were the first, gay wedding at the New York Public Library. It was a thing. The reason we did our design show on HGTV wasn't because the big reason internally within our household was that we wanted to take our family and show these parts of the country that have no idea the insides and outsides and the intimacy of a gay family. That we're nothing's different. That we're the same people, that we love the same, that we fear the same, that we nurture the same. We all want to have access and live a beautiful life. And it was really, our version of trying to show people a different side of what they think they know to be true about a community that a lot of people, to like you just said, don't have access to. The beautiful thing about television is that you can learn so much from the safety of your living room. You can start an episode of something thinking one thing, and you can leave going, wait a minute, hold on a second. There was this one moment when we were, I think I've shared this before, but we were shopping somewhere in LA, and this woman came up to us and she was like, my son came out and I was devastated. And we're like, okay.
Thanks for sharing.
Here we go. It's like, I'm just looking for a tennis shoe. And she goes, but then we were sitting together and your show came on and we started watching it. And it was like, all of a sudden you had your child walked in and we watched the whole episode and I started sobbing. And then it ended with me giving him a hug because I realized that the life that I wanted him to have for himself, he could still have. Yeah. And that was the beauty of the show. And so that was, really made an impact on Nate and I. And I feel it now. It's why one of the big reasons I wanted to join the cast of Queer Eye. I think I've been really, I've always been very active in making sure that I'm out there supporting and advocating for the LGBTQ plus rights. But I'm more than ever, I feel a responsibility to get out there and to be loud and to be proud. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of access that's still being denied. There's a lot of prejudice that's still being fueled. And I really believe in people. I really believe in people. It doesn't matter who you are. I really believe that if you're just open to listening and having a conversation, that people can change and evolve. So that's my commitment. And it's not through controversy or arguing. It's just, it's through nurturing and listening. That's really my goal. But I feel like I got a lot of fucking work to do. I mean, it's a weird time, Brittany. Woo!
I mean, well, it's a very weird time. And I think that's why it's like, that's kind of one of my goals for this podcast was it's like, photography for me has changed my life. I grew up Mormon with a single mother in Utah, and like I now like live in New York with access to all different ways of life and beliefs and different ethnicities, and it's like, and photography for me has been such a gift because it's like and I'm a Sag rising, so it's like, so kind of learning about the world, this for me has been kind of like a passport to, or a portal even to the world, and so I think I feel really strongly about it. And I think what kind of inspired me when I like came out publicly as an ex-Mormon, and it was because of gay rights, and like I was a little bit nervous because it's not something that I openly talk about. So it's like a lot of people don't know that about me, and especially like at work, it's not like you like talk about it at work, it's like, and I was always like nobody needs to know this, it's like, and I was a practicing Mormon in New York, it's like, so for a long time. And so, yeah, I mean, I left the church because of gay rights, because the leadership of the church. So I have this thing about dates. So it was November 5th of 2015. So we had both, it was actually 2 weeks before your birthday. So we were turning, I had just turned 31 and you were going to turn 31. And so it hasn't been that long if you really look at it in like the scope of, the scope
really
of someone's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my whole worldview. So basically what happened was the leadership of the church basically came out with this edict that any same-sex couple would get excommunicated for apostasy and their children would not be allowed to get baptized. And that's when what they call your shelf breaks. And it's when you have so much cognitive dissonance that you file things away. It's in the Book of Mormon musical, actually. Fun fact. I thought it was a Britney thing. No, it's actually a Mormon thing where you put things that don't make sense to you in a box and you file them away on a shelf, and then the shelf gets so heavy and then it's like boom. And so like it was instantly, I was like, I can't understand this. Like the best people I know are gay. Literally the best people I know. And so I really like within 2 days, I like did some research and immediately was like, and now I'm out. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, and I was a Sunday school teacher. I was a gospel doctrine teacher. I was a practicing Mormon in New York. But because of my relationships with people that I loved so very much, I couldn't justify being,
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that like, that's why, you know, I think that that's also why for legislation, they're trying to do these things like don't say gay and things like that, because they know that if you know people, you can't other them. And when you know people, you love them and you would never want to take their rights away.
Exactly. It's wild. You know, it's, listen, we've got a lot of work to do. You know, and even in like my own daughter's school, which is, you know, lovely and progressive, we're still, you know, they're not that normal. You know, my daughter's still explaining situations and there's not a lot of books. There's just a lot of work to do. And I believe that we'll get there, but you know, that's why everything that I do, especially this chapter of my life and this part of my creativity, it's really about, I want to move things forward. And I want to do it in a thoughtful and a nurturing way because I believe in people, but you know, we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, it's just like living your life and being happy, and that actually impacts people. It's like a ripple effect, you know? It's like whether that's part of the community that's not, you know, out yet, who's then inspired, like I can have that too, you know? It's like I've been wanting to ask, you know, a couple of questions like for everybody who's on the show. And it's like, what would you tell your younger self, like your, you know, as a child or as a teenager or even 10 years ago? What would you say to yourself about like what's to come?
And keep trusting yourself. You know, it's, I don't know, there's so much about myself that I still feel like that kid. But I would just say, trust yourself, because that was something that I had to really learn, you know, I had to really grow into. So yeah, just trust yourself.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. That's something that, depending on what your background is, right?
Yeah.
Like I grew up, you know, very religious, and I learned not to trust myself. You know, it's like, and so that's been the journey the past almost 9 years. Is how do you then learn to use your gut, and that there's not something wrong with you because you think differently.
No,
you know, it's like I think that's hard.
That intuition, that whisper, it's the only thing that has guided me. The only thing. And sometimes it's fucking wrong. But the most of the time, it's right. And it gets me to where I need to get. It never happens the way I think it's going to, but it always gets me there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that is kind of maybe your life's purpose, right? It's like you create safety and you create nurturing and you create, you know, this like beautiful boundary in homes where people are free to be whatever they want and be like, feel like an exhale almost. Like when you come in, you can...
I hope so.
Breathe.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope that's what I'm known for.
I think so. I mean, I've seen your work and have worked in so many. I mean, I think let's talk about too, like ceremony and ritual, because I think that that's been a big part of you as a designer, but I think it's because of you like having those practices. And I remember I like was shooting with you when you were renting Rachel Zoe's place, like when you guys had just moved back to LA, and you had a meditation area. And that was like before that was like a thing. Like it's a big thing now, but this was like not a thing 10 years ago, you know? No, I think it was, listen, it's funny, I didn't actually realize how ceremonial I was until a girlfriend pointed it out years later, but I've always really needed it. I mean, listen, through life, I'm fucking crazy. Like I want to do the best
10
people are, babe.
Yeah, I want to do 37 things at any moment. My office feels, every time I have 2 days off, which never happens, they're always like, you know, holding on to the corners of their chair because I'm like, what the fuck is he going to come in for? Because I like to do it. But that ceremony stuff, that ritual is so important to me, and I didn't realize how much it tethers me. You know, the mornings are so vital to me. If I don't have a morning to myself, I'm a total asshole for the first half of the day. It's like spins me out. The evenings, it's just little things that I need that make home feel like home to me, which makes sense because I literally spent all day trying to craft those for other people. And it's really how I identify home is through those rituals. But yeah, I mean, especially when at Canon that you were talking about, the ex Rachel Zoe house, you know, we had just had a baby. she was not that old. And those things, those quiet moments for me, God, I figured out so much about who I was going to be as a parent in those quiet moments, because you enter into it thinking you're going to be one thing. And at least for me, turns out it was the complete opposite from everything I thought I was going to be. So I found a lot, that silence, the truth has a way of screaming in that silence. So for me, it's always been really restorative.
Well, so you travel like all the time, and I think you're literally one of the busiest people I've ever seen.
It's
How do you do that? Like, because other people are like, oh, I'm too busy to meditate. And I'm like, if Jeremiah can do it, I think you can. It's like, so like what would you suggest for people who are like, I don't have time? Like, what are how do you do that when you're like, your routine is not the same every day.
No.
Like you and I both don't have a 9 to 5, like normal schedule. Like it's different every day,
No. Listen, it gets harder. I mean, and I changed the way I meditate, Sometimes going to the trainer for an hour for me is meditative, because I don't think about anything. I'm not tethered to a phone. Somebody else is telling me what to do. I'm not in charge of my hour. I always make time, even if I'm like tomorrow morning, I'm on a 6 a.m. flight. I'll still make time to get up and have coffee by myself before I get there and have a quiet moment. I wanted to start journaling because Anthony is like a big journaler.
It's big, and it's like a brain thing. Yeah,
but I can't keep it going. But I really want to do it because he's so good at it, and he makes time no matter where he goes. So that's my next journey. But no, I always carve out time. Like I just make sure of it, or if I'm on a plane sometimes and I'm rushed, I put my headphones on and I sit there for 30 minutes and I do my thing, but I have to do it.
And see, I love that. And it's such a good example. Like you're someone who's very you're into adventure, you like change, but you also feel grounded, which I think is really I don't ever feel very grounded. I'm so much air and fire that it's I need a little bit of, which is why having a triple Virgo as a husband is probably helpful. But it's it's you feel very grounded, and that seems to be such a big thing, speaking of flight so I remember, because I want to talk about this and I know I want to be conscious of your time, let's talk about Portugal, because I was shooting your office. And that night is when you flew out to go see it. So it's talking about a time capsule of your life. I have so I shot the office, and then you were like, hey, I'm going to go see this house. It's got olive trees. And I'm like, amazing. And then you bought it. And now it's this generational home that you have created. Let's talk about it.
Well, it's my roots.
Yeah.
The truth is, Brittany, I don't know, we're crazy people. We move around all the time. We're always, like I said, chewing through life. But Portugal was the first thing that I walked into and really could see a really clear path to the future with. It was so many things, which I didn't realize at the time, which now I do. I was able to, as a single child, as a kid that grew up with a single mother, I was able to fulfill a lifelong dream of mine, which was to make my mother's life easier. I gave her a home on the farm. I'm renovating it now. She lives there full time. She retired. She's out there. We've been working on it now for 2 years, and just kind of restoring the land and participating in taking care of it. My children have planted lavender with me on the lavender field. They own it. It's theirs. They're going to have it. And it is my legacy to them in a lot of ways. And it's just cracked a lot of things open for us that I didn't expect. We're well, this is, we went out there for a month this last summer, and it was a real hard reacclimation, I got to tell you, because it was a beautiful life. It's not about me. I don't have to listen to it. I'm not out there. No, I'm the least interesting thing about that farm. It's, your whole purpose is to nurture and support this land and this thing, and the children are running around. I bought a telescope and made this area for the stars, and that we laid out one night and had too much wine, and the kids looked at the stars and I laughed. And our daughter told me right before we left, she's like, someday I'm going to get married here, Dad. And I was like, that's I don't know what our life will be here in the States, but I know that piece will always be there. And by the way, my mother's baked into it, which is the whole other crazy thing. She's this path to her house will always be what it is. And, the smell of her pies that she's cooking that you can smell up at our house. It's just all these things that I never thought I would be able to provide. It's just I had no idea that I kind of had an idea when I left you that day that it might be something magical, but I had no idea it was going to be what it turned out to be.
I mean, that's so beautiful to me. And I think it's kind of like a full circle moment, right? Because your grandmother's Portuguese and she was not the most nurturing, right? And then your mom was an army brat, didn't have that sense of home. You had a very difficult kind of upbringing. And now look, you have this house in Portugal that you did this. You did this. And now your children, I listened to one of your podcast episodes where you interviewed your mom and Poppy. Yeah. And I actually teared up when Poppy was when you asked her what home meant to her. And she said, it's somewhere that I can rely on and that I can go to my room and I can just be myself. And I was I literally was crying because I was that's so beautiful to me that you gave your daughter this beautiful thing that has echoes of your history and your mother's history and your grandmother's history. And that what means home for her is that stability and grounded and safety, but also that she has a place to retreat to. That's just, she can feel safe in herself within. I mean, that when she said that word, I mean, home for me was never a place that was reliable, or particularly safe. And there was never a place that I could run to. And so, as you just said, it was particularly impactful for myself. And I think also for my mother, who, as we've, our relationship has progressed, she's reconciled things and we've addressed things and healed. But yeah, there was a generational kind of trauma that this property is kind of mending. And to your point, I can feel my grandmother in the land. There's it's a really special thing, and I appreciate you for recognizing that, because it was, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I'm really proud of it. It's it's a pain in my ass, this farm, but it is. The best things are.
Oh my God. I am a gentleman farmer. Who knew? 36 sheep. I've got 4 peacocks, 4 dogs. It's 3 olive orchards. It is a zoo, but it's ours, I don't know.
I love that. I think it's really beautiful, and it's such a gift. And I think for the listener, I think that's going to be impactful for them too, to hear that you've taken these things and you've gone on this journey, and it's and that you can find home wherever you are, but it's the echoes of your life that are what's most important. But also it's that things that were painful and things that were difficult, that you've been able to transmute them into this beautiful life. And I know people say beautiful is it's a cliche. Everybody says beautiful, but it is a beautiful life. It's really lovely. So we're basically out of time, but I have 2 more questions for you.
Go for it.
Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years?
I want to be in Europe. I want to be in Portugal on the farm. I'm not sure how much back and forth. Obviously, I'll always be in New York. New York's home. But I don't know. I see a big life ahead of us. So, I want to be on some wild adventure. I'll just put it that way.
I'm sure you will be. I honestly couldn't imagine anything else for you.
I hope so.
That's your thing. All right. And then our very last question. I always ask people to think of their secret delight. So that's supposed to be a secret. It's going to stay a secret. What can you share that's a not so secret delight, or something that you're currently delighted with? Because this is still a PG-13 or under,
I know. I was going to say, where do I want to go?
We're not going to do the actual secret. So it's something that you're more comfortable with sharing with the public.
My secret delight.
Or not so secret. Something you're delighted with.
It's going to sound so cliche, but I'm really obsessed with my husband right now.
I think that's wonderful.
The Queer Eye was really tough, and a lot of different things to navigate interpersonally as a couple. And he grew so much and has worked so hard to be there for me in a different way, which has been so beautiful. And to be in a relationship with somebody for 13 years and to evolve individually, but then still evolve simultaneously together. He's for sure, I'm particularly delighted with him right now.
I love that. He's so proud of you. Your book launch, I was how did I get an invite? This was exclusive. And I was wait a second. I thought it was going to be a big party. Then I was wait a second. This is
I don't like big parties. You know me.
I know, but I was very honored that I got to be part of it. But I ran into Nate and I was like, you've got to be so proud of him. Like, and I said, congratulations. He's like, I didn't do anything. He's like, I got to just like watch him do it. And I was like, yeah, but you were a support. And I think that that makes a big difference. You know, it's like, because you guys both can be individual beings, but you're able to support each other and build a beautiful life together, which I think is like really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't do it with anybody else. It's always been him. It'll always be him.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are the cutest. And I think, of course, you are America's couple, you know? It's like, yeah.
Listen, I'm obsessed with him, and everybody else is too. So he's not hard to love. He's a pain in the ass, as I mentioned, but he's not hard to love.
No. Oh, well, thank you, Jeremiah. It was an absolute delight to have you on the show today. And you are my very first guest. And I'm just so happy to get to like start this new chapter. You know, it's like we've had all of these firsts together, and I'm just so like honored that I got this much of your time. And thank you.
You're so great at this. Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Darling.
I forgot we were even recording. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I forgot to ask Jer to give his social media handle. So if you want to follow along with what Jeremiah is doing and his beautiful design work, his beautiful life, and his cute kids and stuff about Queer Eye, be sure to follow him on his socials, Jeremiah Brent, and then his design firm is Jeremiah Brent Design. If you enjoyed this podcast, which I hope you did, please subscribe. And if you would like to leave a review, you may or may not get name dropped in the next episode. We love to reward a gold star at the end. I'm a gold star girl myself. All right, if you'd like to follow along with my socials, Brittany Ambridge, across the board, and my website is the same. And then the credits, we have beautiful cover art by Stephanie Brookler, and my producer, big thanks to him, Juan Paulini Diaz.